Previously on Patta History, we saw that Ceylon was at a pivotal point on its political journey. Sinhalese and Tamil leadership are in a tussle to share power. People are calling for the British to leave. So, a new constitution is introduced to nudge the country towards self-government and unite its races and factions. But it seems like nothing can resolve the many simmering tensions on the island. This is episode 2 of Sri Lanka, a history of power in paradise. Communal representation is, as it were, a canker in the body politic, eating deeper and deeper into the vital energies of the people, breeding self-interest, suspicion, and animosity. These were the sentiments of Lord Donoughmore's commission in 1931. They proposed two astoundingly progressive changes. First, granting universal adult franchise. Second, ending communal representation to unite Ceylon under a common identity. This means Legislative Council members would represent only their territories and not their races. What would this mean for how the country was run? It addressed two issues. So far, a few thousand voters selected for their higher literacy and incomes were able to elect representatives to the Legislative Council. This amounted to only 4% of the island's adults who chose leaders, who in turn controlled Ceylon's affairs along with the British governor. The Sinhalese leadership and elites bristle at the suggestion that people of lower income, education or caste be allowed to vote. One member who ardently opposed extending the franchise to low-income Ceylonese for fear their votes could be bought, his name was SWRD Bandaranaike. The second issue was thornier. Over the years, Sinhalese and Tamil lobby groups had pushed for more seats to shape the council to their interests. Because members represented races and territories, the council could get divisive and slow. So, in a radical attempt to build a single civic nation rather than an ethnic one, 50 members would be elected territorially by all adults over the age of 21 to a more representative state council. But now these solutions give way to problems of their own. The new constitution ends up electing only 20% Tamil representatives, down from 33%, so the issue of race is even more charged. And there was a second catch. To qualify for state council membership, you needed English. So, while there was intention to democratize and unite, race, language, and caste issues do not disappear. And the English requirement still favors Western-educated elites. The new constitution is struggling to square the circle of Ceylonese politics. And how would things get done in 1931? The existing colonial administration would be divided into 10 departments to run the country. The new constitution proposes that all parliamentarians be members of 7 of these departments, known as executive committees. Then, the chair of each of the 7 executive committees was made a minister, one of 10 who formed the Board of Ministers, together with the other 3 who were officers of the state appointed by the governor. The Board of Ministers decides on finance and the parliamentary agenda, but the governor still controls legal affairs, public administration, and the police. This was an experiment in getting a group of elected representatives to decide on important matters equitably, so no one group could exert pressure over another. But why stop short of handing full control to the Ceylonese? The British argue that it's for Ceylon's own good, that if it were released at this moment, larger communities would dominate and impose their will on minorities. And one of these minority origin movements is stirring in the north to a truly unfortunate outcome. 2 Christian teachers in Jaffna, Handi Perinbanayagam and Orator Subramaniam, are so inspired by India's Swaraj movement that they start appealing for their own Purna Swaraj, meaning absolute independence. They give talks around the north and call for a united Sinhala and Tamil front against the British. They found the Jaffna Youth Congress, mostly other teachers and students, and their leagues spread around the region. They even invite several CNC members to listen to prominent Indian independence leaders, including Komaladevi Chattopadhyay, who later became the first woman to run for a legislative seat in India, losing narrowly by just 55 votes. But the movement also opposes the rigid Jaffna castes and its treatment of oppressed caste Tamils. This is an affront to the mainstream political elite whom Sir Ponnambalam Ramanathan had managed to align to the Donoughmore experiment. But then he dies in 1930. With this vacuum, the JYC wants no part of the new proposal. They want the British out and call for a boycott of the upcoming election. Certain Sinhalese even insidiously encourage the boycott, spurred on by the prospect of even less Tamil representation. The JYC's short-lived movement is rousing, but it leaves an indelible mark on Ceylon's politics. 4 of the 5 constituencies in the north went completely unrepresented at the inaugural 1931 State Council elections. Afterwards, the boycott was condemned by Tamil leadership and an election was held for the vacant seats nearly 2 years later. So how does Ceylonese leadership perform under this new setup? Remember we told you about 3 influences in Lanka's politics in episode 1? Sinhalese Buddhist nationalism, Labour's power struggle, and elites' protection of their own interests. Now these 3 could play out relatively unbridled, at least for a while. But the country is immediately plunged into 3 successive crises. The constitutionalists, mostly elite men aligned closely with the British system, are now firmly in power, and they must offer solutions to the impact of the Great Depression, a severe drought, and a near-crippling malaria epidemic. Sri Lanka's economy had contracted sharply, plunging from $80 per capita GDP to $33 in just 6 years. After 5 years of economic depression, a drought takes hold of the coconut cultivating areas of Kurunegala and Kegol. Cultivation of paddy, a water-intensive crop, is all but halted. Then malaria, which had been endemic to the dry zone, ravages the country. The death toll is as high as 100,000. With inordinate suffering, the new state machinery is overwhelmed. If you watched episode 3 of Patta History's Independence series, you would remember the Suriya Mal movement, which provides relief during the malaria epidemic when the State Council failed to sufficiently intervene. In what would be the start of a long-lasting love affair with Lanka's youth and socialist ideals, young Ceylonese are first drawn to the Suriya Mal movement. Then the Lanka Samasamaja Party is formed to unite them in an expression against what they see as a conservative capitalist class wielding all the power in the State Council. And they are not wrong. At the top, there is a power struggle between D.B. Jayatilaka, who has the number 2 spot in the Board of Ministers, and a whip-smart D.S. Senayanake. Although both men were arrested after the 1915 riots, the former's Buddhist elder statesman-like manner and influence in the council makes him a British favourite, while D.S. is considered a potential anti-colonial upstart. The council pushes for more change. They first try to push Europeans out and Ceylonese in to key government positions. They then turn to the constitution. There is a notion that executive committees tie the Board of Ministers up in protracted conflict with no accountability, and that a cabinet system could speed things up. Now, this would mean that rather than an equitable distribution of committee power, highly popular officials elected by the majority would be given portfolios. The minorities would lose control. It would be almost like handing over power to the Sinhalese. The issue is shelved. The council members are up for re-election, and 1936 is a very different Ceylon, depleted by hardship and disease. Social justice is on everyone's minds. So, 2 fiery young Marxists, N.M. Pereira and Philip Gunawardena, are elected to the council, ousting aristocrats from their seats. The CNC fares well in the election, but the real change? The new Board of Ministers is entirely Sinhalese. Racialism in Ceylon politics is about to blow up. When the British acquired the island, it was divided into 5 territories, distinguished between maritime provinces and the Kandyan provinces. In 1835, the Colebrook-Cameron reforms recommend that these ethnic divisions be replaced with 5 territories, with 4 more added over the next 50 years. But these borders paid no attention to ethnicity, and this was the problem for some politicians. See, a territory might elect a popular representative who didn't necessarily represent the ethnic majority of that territory. D.S. Senayanake, the Minister of Agriculture and Lands, introduces a series of laws to develop agriculture and relocate rural families from the densely populated southwest to the east. They were called colonization schemes, and to the minorities who lived in the east, it was exactly what it sounded like. This move improves the odds that a Sinhalese candidate could get elected in these historically minority-populated territories. Not to be outdone in appealing to the Sinhalese, SWRD Bandaranaike, a low-country Sinhalese himself, marries into the Kandyan aristocracy, transitions to Sinhala national dress, adopts Buddhism, and forms the Sinhala Mahasabha to unite what he sees as a divided Sinhalese. The elites of Ceylon are getting a feel for how to play majoritarian politics. Over centuries, Malaiyaha Tamils had been brought by the British as indentured labour from India, and workers had continued to seek jobs on the island. By the 1940s, they number around 700,000. So, the CNC, who are made up of both upper caste Sinhalese and Tamils, campaigned to restrict Malaiyaha Tamil immigrants. In 1939, 800 Indian origin labourers are fired from the port and railways. The LSSP takes up their cause. When an Australian Marxist named Mark Anthony Bracegirdle, who has come at the invitation of the LSSP to talk about the Indian Tamil immigration issue, it spurs the British to deport him. Also raising his tenacious voice at all this blatant discrimination against Tamils is a diminutive Cambridge-educated lawyer called G.G. Ponnambalam. G.G. is an outsider to elite Tamil politics, and he demands 50-50 representation of minorities and Sinhalese. This is rejected by the team negotiating a new constitution as undemocratic. Three sides are trying different approaches, all to swell their ranks. The colony is a boiling pot, and the governor is given back some of his power. D.S. Senayanake sees a triple threat to his leadership: SWRD's new Sinhala Buddhist identity, Tamil representatives, and Labour's gaining momentum. But finding the CNC apathetic, he breaks away to form the United National Party. Many believe that Ceylonese ministers accepted a substandard deal for independence. But in fact, DS, accompanied by Sir Oliver Gunathilaka and Sir Ivor Jennings, draft their own constitution and use their wartime loyalty, ethnic tensions, leftist politics, and every other trick in the book on a war-weary British to speed up Ceylon's dominion status. And you can watch how they did this in the final installment of our independent series. DS convinces Lord Salisbury, chairman of a commission to usher in independence, that the ministers would safeguard minorities. But just in case, the constitution ensures that laws which could discriminate need a 2/3 majority. They also provide for the election of multiple members in some diverse electorates. The year is 1948. The chapter of the British Raj in South Asia is closed, and Ceylon, with its new constitution named after Lord Salisbury, is now moved to dominion status. D.S. Senayanake and his team, fearing India's dominance, also negotiate a defence and foreign policy agreement. Ceylon is to manage its own affairs with its own Prime Minister, Cabinet and Parliament. The House of Representatives initially have 101 members, representing 89 districts who convene in the State Council building on Galface Green in Colombo. But race and caste cannot be ignored. The UNP moved to secure the lucrative plantation base of Kandyan Sinhalese. They introduce a series of laws to strip Indian, Tamil and Pakistani residents of their citizenship and right to vote. Even G.G. Ponnambalam supports the bill, while S.J.V. Chelvanayakam opposes it. Eventually, the latter leaves the Tamil Congress to form his own Tamil Federal Party. 90,000 Indian Tamils were denied the vote, and in 1952, Sinhalese representation in Parliament went up to 73%. SWRD Bandaranaike then goes all out. He launches the Sri Lanka Freedom Party to capitalize on citizens' dissatisfaction with the out-of-touch and conservative UNP and promising to make Sinhala the national language. He defeats the UNP in the 1956 polls. Between his leadership of the Sinhalese Buddhist cause and a little fiddling with constituencies, the Sinhalese now have a 78% majority in parliament. Then he plunges the knife. Sinhala is proposed as the official language of the state and the courts. The law would disadvantage native Tamil, English or Malay speakers. Tamils and left-wing politicians are vocally opposed and stage satyagrahas around the island. The riots and bloodshed of 1956 that follow are well covered in the final episode of Patta Histories, An Uncommon Man. What is now believed to be a direct attack on all Tamils pushes the Tamil Federal Party led by Selvanayake to demand a withdrawal of the bill, autonomy for Tamil-speaking people, reinstating citizenship rights to Indian Tamils, and an end to settling Sinhalese colonists in Tamil-speaking areas. But instead, a watered-down concession is made called the Bandaranaike-Selvanayake Pact, which pleases neither side. In 1959, Bandaranaike is assassinated. During his tenure, Sinhalese Buddhist identity was amplified and his administration faced paralyzing strikes, a full-scale race riot, and was overwhelmed with processing so much change in such short time. His widow, Sirumawa Bandaranaike, is persuaded to lead the SLFP. 6 months later, there is an election with no decisive winner. The UNP, now led by D.S. Senanayake's son Dudley, refuses to form an alliance with the Tamil Federal Party, and they lose the next election a few months later in July 1960, despite winning the popular vote. By the 1960s, nearly 1.5 million Ceylonese are members of trade unions, and they remain an easily mobilized and durable pool of political support, even in today's Sri Lanka. And so far, it is the Marxist parties who have used them most effectively, until the SLFP soon became the first non-Marxist party to ally with unions. The SLFP campaign to nationalize public enterprises break further away from the meddlesome West and prioritize Sinhalese Buddhist interests. Bandaranaike's agenda is clear. What her husband started as a game of political one-upmanship, she makes her mission total Sinhalization. She enacts the Sinhala-only bill. Then, on the 20th of February 1961, men and women in a Tamil-led satyagraha blocked local government employees from entering their offices or kacheris by sitting at their doorways in protest. The police is called. One satyagrahi recalls the story of young Francis Pereira, a Bharata Tamil whose ancestors were part of one of the oldest maritime trading communities from Chilao. Pereira has been dragged away by the police more than 15 times. For over an hour, he manages to break free, hurling himself down to lay flat in protest. Eyewitnesses said that by the end, his clothes were in tatters as tears stained the ground where he fell. The following year, Christian military officers and members of parliament, who believed they were being increasingly sidelined in the Sinhalization of the country, plot an unsuccessful coup. Bandaranaike is rapidly making enemies. Scrambling, she reshuffles the cabinet, but her parliamentary support is waning. She manages to still get some things done though. She replaces the Ceylon civil service, which smacks to her of elite colonial bureaucracy, with the Ceylon administrative service. In a continuation of her husband's rousing campaign to empower rural Ceylon, she appoints Gramasevakas, literally village servants, to replace the village headman. But her trademark program of aggressive nationalization and efforts to edge out multinational companies in pursuit of self-sufficiency lead to hardship, and the SLFP lose their parliamentary majority. Dudley Senanayake of the UNP then forms an alliance with the Tamil Federal Party and Sinhalese nationalist parties to secure a majority in 1965. But beset with economic problems and a crippling hartal from the elimination of the rice subsidy, their National Front government don't make much headway. Ceylonese voters now have a taste for politicians who are willing to yield to grassroots causes with stirring nationalist sentiments. They're not quite ready to go back to distant stepmotherly treatment from what they perceive to be the party of the elites. Bandaranaike forms a powerful alliance with the United Left Front, the umbrella party of left-wing politics led by Dr. N.M. Pereira, and she is voted back into power in 1970. The new alliance, called the United Front, has enough support from workers, and Bandaranaike is emboldened enough to start on a program of major reforms. The new government also favors a centrally planned economy. But first, she quashes a violent armed insurgency from a Marxist youth group, the Janata Vimukti Peramuna, in 1971. The JVP, formed 6 years ago, reacts to what they see is the new and more subdued politics of other left-wing parties who are now in the government. 1,200 insurgent deaths are recorded, and double that number are given prison terms. The military and police forces are significantly stepped up, and a state of emergency is declared. Then, Bandaranaike embarks on her most ambitious project yet, to draft a constitution. The only person up to the task is the lawyer, Dr. Colvin R. De Silva, a pioneering Marxist and the LSSP Minister of Plantation Industries, who also sported three-piece suits with scorpion orchids adorning the lapel. Their task was to model a constitution on the ideologies of what they perceived to be a maturing electorate. The drafters thought, for too long, Ceylon had been swinging left and right between capitalism and central planning, so it was time to plant the democratic socialist flag. On a cloudy Sunday in July 1970, the Prime Minister convenes all 157 members of the House of Representatives to a meeting at the Navarangala Theatre in Colombo. She intends to pass a resolution declaring this group the Constituent Assembly of the People of Sri Lanka. Only then could the work begin. The opposition is hesitant, but Bandaranaike has stepped up her PR campaign, publicly proclaiming that the new constitution would serve to build a nation ever more strongly conscious of its oneness amidst the diversity imposed on it by history. Dudley Senayanake is unmollified, but it is J.R. Jayawardena who pulls opposition support together. Even though they know it will be a left-wing framework, he says that as long as it enshrines the basic liberties of democracy, the constitution should be enacted. V. Dharmalingam, speaking on behalf of the Tamil Federal Party, says his party has a mandate to fight for the establishment of a constitution under which the Tamils in this country will be able to live forever as Tamils in Ceylon. But when the work begins, the problem becomes apparent. Sinhalese and Marxists control the steering and drafting committees. What comes out is a rigid structure. It weakens the PM, strengthens the parliament, deprives citizens of certain fundamental rights, and calls for Buddhism as a state religion. Nihal Jayavikrama of the drafting committee writes to Bandaranaike about his worries. It should be possible for a parliamentarian of today, if he were a private citizen 2 years hence, to be able to say that the constitution affords him the same protection which he received from it in the days when he ruled under it. The PM writes to Dr. Colvin to tone it down. Then comes the issue of language. Despite Sinhala already being the official language of state, it is now drafted into the constitution. The Tamil Federal Party try to oppose it, but their proposed amendment is defeated in parliament. They walk out of the process and SJV Chelpanayakam resigns his seat. 2 years after the first meeting of MPs is called, they are reconvened to adopt the final draft. The Governor-General is replaced by another figurehead, this time called the President. It also made Buddhism the state religion. Remember in episode 1, the British pledged to the Kandyan aristocracy that it would protect the Buddhist faith if they ceded control? Well, now this sacred duty belongs to the government of the new Republic of Sri Lanka. But the real change was how powerful the new legislature, known as the National State Assembly, is made. They get to choose a Prime Minister from among their ranks, who then appoints a cabinet of ministers to run various departments. But the biggest change was this, where the courts used to be independent, even striking down laws which they found unconstitutional. This is no longer the case. The new idea is that the courts get their power from the National State Assembly, and judges are appointed by MPs who represent the people, so courts couldn't oppose any laws they passed. Then the final hammer is thrown. To prevent a new Tamil state from emerging, the Republic is declared a unitary state. A last-minute addition by Felix Dias Bandaranaike. It means that the NSA could not delegate its authority and that no new state could emerge in Sri Lanka. Their rigid stance around language, religion, and a unitary state forces the hands of even moderate minorities, and by 1975, Tamil parties unite to form the Tamil Union Liberation Front, led by SJV Chelpanayakam. So, on a May morning in 1976, in a small town in the northernmost part of the Jaffna Peninsula, a place steeped in cultural importance to the Jaffna Tamil people, they adopt the Vaddukodai resolution, calling for the creation of Tamil Elam, meaning an independent state. After years of central planning, government enterprises have bloated and are laughably inefficient. There is austerity, rationing, emergency rule, and hardship for the citizens. Bandaranaike needs to open up the country for foreign investment, but her LSSP coalition members won't hear of it. So, she dismisses LSSP ministers from her cabinet. Without their left-wing bulwark, the SLFP is considerably weaker. Knowing that they will be beaten in the 1977 election, Bandaranaike makes an unsuccessful attempt to delay. Their defeat is humiliating. Meanwhile, J.R. Jayawardena has been steadily planning the changes that his party needs to make in order to win. And as the country burns, he is waiting quietly in the wings. Catch us next Sunday on Patta History as we uncover what is next in store for the new republic in the final episode of our 3-part series on Sri Lanka, a history of power in paradise. Meanwhile, comment below and tell us, what change would you have made to the 1972 Constitution to change the course of Sri Lanka's history?